Welcome to session 22 of EE 203. Today we will do a review of phasors, which you may have already studied in the first semester, and the application of phasors to circuit analysis. This is all in the context of sinusoidal steady state analysis. We concluded the last time that there were two important points. The first was if my input is a sinusoidal function, if my input is a sinusoid, that means it can be either sine or cosine, right? Cosine function. Then that implies that my output will also be a sinusoid of the same frequency. This is an important point to remember. This is the basis of the entire phasor analysis. And since my output is a sinusoid of the same frequency in steady state, right? If it's for a very short duration, then you have to worry about the transient response. But if you're talking about steady state, then the transients die out because they exponentially decay. And the only thing that is of importance is the sinusoid function. And the key point was the sinusoid function has the same frequency. Now, we said as a consequence of that, if I want to solve this network, then all I need to do is in the Laplace transform, for whatever I was using Laplace transforms earlier, I just need to now replace S with j omega and solve it. And the advantage is that I no longer have to worry about doing inverse Laplace transforms and doing tedious computations. So remember that initially we used differential equations. We converted differential equations into algebraic equations using Laplace transform. And now this is the final simplification. Only for the special case of sinusoidal functions, for that special case, what we are saying is that you can replace the Laplace transform with a direct equation without having to compute any inverses by just replacing the value of S with j omega. Okay. You remember that S had a value of sigma plus j omega, right? S is a complex frequency, which is sigma plus j omega. And sigma is coming from the real part, which is the exponential part. So either it's exponentially decaying, e power minus sigma t, or where sigma is a positive number, or if sigma is negative, it's exponentially increasing. So we are not having this part. We are only considering the imaginary part or the oscillatory part. And therefore, whenever you have a sinusoidal function, we can replace S with j omega. Okay, I'm repeating these points because this is the key message. After this, everything follows naturally. So for example, if you have the case where you have a input voltage, which is a sinusoid given by V of t in the time domain is equal to some magnitude Vm cos omega t plus phi. What is going to be the limits of this function in terms of magnitude? Since cosine goes from -1 to +1, that means V of t has a minimum value of minus Vm and it goes all the way to plus Vm. Now I can rewrite this as saying using the Euler's identity that cosine omega t plus phi is the real part of e power j omega t plus phi, right? And therefore I can say that this voltage, initial voltage, which is some sinusoid function, is given by the real part of Vm into e power j omega t plus phi. And I can split it into two terms, exponential of j phi and exponential of j omega t. The omega over here is what? It's the frequency of the sinusoid. And what is phi? Phi is some phase shift. Okay. It means that the signal is not starting at 0. It could be starting either before or after 0. So if I were to write, just do it for clarity. If this is time and I have some function, which is f of t, is some sinusoid function, then if the function is just cosine omega t, right? If I'm drawing cosine omega t, then at t is equal to 0, cos omega t is equal to 1, and at omega t is equal to pi by 2, or t is equal to pi by 2 omega, then this function will become 0. Okay, so it will oscillate and do that. Now, if I have a different function which is cosine omega t plus say theta, then what this means is, when will this argument be 0? When omega t is equal to minus theta, right? Or t is equal to minus theta over omega. That's when this argument is 0. That means this function attains its maximum value for some value when t is negative. So the second function, which is in red, will attain its maximum value when t is negative, and it will follow this path, right? Because what we have shown is that the cosine has a maximum value when the argument is 0. And the argument, when you have only omega t, the argument is 0 when t is 0. When you have omega t plus theta, then the argument is 0 when t is equal to what? Let me undo this. When t is equal to okay. And therefore, what you would say is that the second function, which is omega t plus theta, is actually started before the black one, right? The red one starts before. So the red one is an advanced version of the black one. And otherwise, the rest of the shape is exactly the same. And therefore, this is also a cosine function, but it is just shifted by some value phi. And that phi is called a phase shift. In this case, there is a positive phase shift. That means it's advanced. If the phase shift is negative, if it is minus phi, then the function will start after 0, after t is equal to 0. Okay. So let me just erase these. So when you have any cosine function, then it can be represented as an exponential function. And that would just become e power j omega t plus phi. Then I can split this omega t and phi as two terms, e power j phi and e power j omega t. Then I can say that v of t is the real of v into e power j omega t. And that v over here is written as vm into e power j phi. So this is the phasor. Okay, what happened here? It looks like there's a lot of math. It's very straightforward. All we are saying is that supposing I have a function originally which is given by Vm cos omega t plus phi, then I want to convert it to a representation where I no longer explicitly write this omega t, because what was my first conclusion? If my input is some sinusoid or cosine, my output is the sinusoid of the same frequency. Because my output has the same frequency, I no longer have to worry about this omega term, because I know that in this circuit, all the frequency components will have the same value omega. It cannot be omega 2, it cannot be omega 3, it is going to be omega. Therefore, I don't need to worry about omega t. I just need to worry about the phase shift. So let me give an example, like draw it out for more clarity. That if I were to have a circuit, we did 2-port circuits and all of that. So let's say there's a 2-port network, and let's say it's a T network. So there is this. I won't draw an resistor. Just draw some blocks, and there is a block over here. For example, then we said that I could have some voltage V1 and I could have some voltage V2. If V1 is equal to is some function of say sine omega t, then it means that V2 is going to be equal to sine of omega t plus some phase. Okay. Now two things can change. The phase can change and the magnitude can change. So I can say that this is B and let's say this is A. So my input has some magnitude and frequency. My output will have a different magnitude because the output depends on the ratio of the various impedance blocks, but the frequency is going to be exactly the same. And therefore, the only difference I can expect is a change in the magnitude and change in the phase. Why do you expect a change in the phase? Because we know that when current, supposing the voltage is applied across a inductor or a capacitor, if my circuit has say some resistor, inductor, capacitor, so let's say there is a R over here, then there is some inductor, there is a capacitor. So if I have these various blocks, then accordingly the phase of the signal will change, right? Because the current is C times dV by dt. So if the voltage is sine omega t, then the current through the capacitor is cosine omega t. Similarly, if the voltage is sine omega t, then if I want to find the current through the inductor, then it is going to be 1 by L. L di by dt is the voltage. So 1 by L integral V dt, right? So that will become like a minus cosine. So you'll have the difference in phases, and that phase difference will come up as some value phi. On the other hand, because you're finding V2 is like the, say, the ratio of V1 divided, V1 is divided between this and this, if I want to get the open circuit voltage V2. So there is a difference in the magnitude. Okay, some part of V1 is dropping across the capacitor and V2 is equal to that. So there is a magnitude difference and there is a phase difference, but the frequency is going to be the same. Therefore, what I can say is, I can write that the input voltage V1 is written as some magnitude, and what is the phase over here? It is sine omega t plus 0, right? So it is some magnitude plus the phase is 0 degrees. V2 is what? Some magnitude B times what is the phase? Some phi. Okay. I'm not going to write sine omega t explicit. I'm not going to write the omega t term explicitly because omega remains the same throughout the circuit. So this is a very important property that allows us to use this phasor notation. Therefore, if you come back to this and see that V is V cos omega t plus phi, it is written as the real part of some exponential function. And in that exponential function, what you're doing is you're keeping the j omega t out, and you're only keeping this magnitude and phase term together, Vm e power j omega j phi. Okay. And that Vm e power j phi is what has been written as V over here. So this is the phasor. That means I'm ignoring the exponential of j omega t and I'm only considering the remaining item, which is the magnitude and the phase term. So this is called a phasor. So let's look at the different notations. Supposing I have the voltage as Vm cos omega t plus phi, then just like I told you, magnitude is Vm, in the phasor, magnitude is Vm, angle is phi. So it's angle phi. What about if it is Vm sine omega t plus phi? Then in this case, you know that sine omega t is nothing but cos omega t minus pi by 2, right? So there are some identities I've written in the side. So here is cos omega t plus or minus pi by 2 is minus plus sine or theta, right? So if cos theta minus pi by 2 is plus sine theta, so the sine theta can be written as cos theta minus pi by 2, right? That means let me write it out here. So this is Vm cos omega t plus theta plus phi minus pi by 2. These are the same things. And therefore, if you consider my original notation that I wrote Vm cos of this is equal to Vm angle phi, that means this is Vm into angle phi minus pi by 2. So phi minus 90 degrees. Similarly, for the sake of currents, you write as Im. So that is cos omega t plus theta, and that is written as Im angle theta. And similarly, sine omega t plus theta, Im angle theta minus pi by 2. So here you are taking the reference as cos omega t, right? That's the point. You could have taken the reference as sine omega t also. That's up to you. Now, this is something we looked at in the previous class. We said that any complex number can be written as z is equal to x plus jy. Why is this of importance to us? Because supposing I'm writing the impedance z, right? By coincidence, this is z, but if I had the impedance function z is equal to r plus ls, right? And what did I say? Replace s with j omega. So now this is j omega l, right? And therefore this is like this expression. So I have x is the real term, is some resistance, plus j times over here, y is what? Omega l. So if I have some expression like this, some impedance in the rectangular form, I can convert it into the polar form by writing as r angle phi, where the r is the magnitude, which is root of x square plus y square, and phi is tan inverse y by x. So in the exponential form, it would be r exponential of j phi. In the polar form, we write it as r angle phi. And this is what we call the phasor. So what are the simple rules? Normally, if I'm doing circuit analysis, then if I have a complex number in the in the rectangular form, that means I have some real value plus some imaginary value, then it is easy for me to do addition and subtraction, because I can simply add up the real terms and the imaginary terms, or simply subtract the real terms and subtract the imaginary terms. But if I want to do multiplication and division, it's easier to do it in the polar form or the phasor form, because when you want to multiply two terms with complex numbers like x plus jy and x minus jy, then in this case, not x minus jy, sorry. So this is x1 plus jy1 and x2 plus jy2. Then you have to do a lot of complicated cross multiplication. Whereas in the other case, if you're using the phasors, then it's very straightforward. Just multiply the magnitude, add up the angles. If division means divide the magnitude, subtract the angles, right? And similarly, if I want to do reciprocal in a phasor, then it's 1 by r and angle minus phi. And square root would be square root of magnitude and angle divided by 2. Okay. And inverse is minus of the angle. So these are just some rules of phasor algebra. So let's look at a simple example. Supposing I have a voltage which is V given by 12 cos 60t plus 45 degrees. It's applied to a 0.1 Henry inductor. Find the current through the inductor. Okay. So the question is, I have some voltage and then some inductor. Which is 0.1 Henry. And the voltage here is, let's call it V, which is given by 12 cos 60t plus 45 degrees. So what is the steady state current? Then what is the steps I said? First, find out the transform impedance. What is the transform impedance? We said it is equal to S times L, and then replace S with j omega. So this becomes j omega L, right? What is the transform impedance of a capacitance? For capacitance, we said XC is 1 over SC, and that's equal to 1 by j omega C. So for the inductor, we are saying V is j omega L into I. Voltage, transform voltage, is equal to j omega L into transform current. And this word transform that I'm using is very important, because remember that once I have written this phasor notation, I have actually transformed to the frequency domain. Okay, it's not in the time domain anymore. So the voltage is, transform voltage is j omega L into I. What are V and I? These are phasors. So V is given by magnitude is 12. What is the angle? 45 degrees. What is the frequency? 60 hertz. Okay, but that we are not writing down. We know that omega is 60. So V is equal to 12 angle 45 degrees. Now what is the current? Current is voltage divided by the impedance, V by j omega L. And omega is equal to what? We said 60 hertz. So this is j into 60. Inductance is 0.1 Henry. So that's also done. And the numerator is 12 angle 45. So if I divide these two, then this is 12 angle 45 divided by 60 into 0.1 is 6. And j is what? It's an angle 90. Remember that. Because what's happening is, we are having the space of a real axis, and this is the imaginary one, which is j times something. So the real axis is at the angle 0. So real axis is like x-axis, and the j-axis is like y-axis. So when I write a complex number, x plus jy, that means I'm taking some value of x and some value of y, and this is that point, x plus jy. Okay. And if I were to draw a vector, then I would say that is a phasor. That phasor, what is the magnitude of that vector? The magnitude of the vector is root of x square plus y square. What is the angle formed? Theta. Theta is equal to tan inverse y by x. Okay. So remember that if any complex number in the complex plane can be written as some real value plus j times some, the imaginary part. So that's like your x and y axes. And then if I draw a vector to that, that's called the phasor. The magnitude of the phasor is root of x square plus y square. And the angle is tan inverse y by x. The angle made with the x axis or the real axis. Since this is J60 over here in the question now down here, since the denominator is j omega L, j into 60, j means it is purely imaginary. That means it's lying on the y-axis. So what is the angle that the y-axis makes with the x-axis? 90 degrees. Therefore, this is angle 90 degrees. So numerator is 12 angle 45, denominator is 6 angle 90. How do I divide two phasors? Divide the magnitude. 12 divided by 6 is equal to 2 and subtract the angles. 45 degrees minus 90 degrees minus 45 degrees. Therefore, this is the current through the phasor, straightforward, right? If you had to do Laplace transform, what would happen? You would have converted, you would have had to write like a equation for this to say that this is s by s square plus omega square, solve the thing and then find the inverse Laplace transform. So only for the special case of a sinusoid, that means a sine or a cosine function, you are able to directly apply this j omega L and directly compute the answer current. So what is the current in the time domain? This is in the frequency domain, right? So if I convert it to time domain, then the answer is magnitude 2 cos, because I said it's the same function. If the voltage is cos omega t, the current is also cos omega t. So it's going to be cos 60t and this is also cos 60t. Only thing that changed is what? The angle. So the original voltage is plus 45, this is minus 45. Does this seem fair? Does it make sense? Yes. Why? Because we know that in an inductor, the current leads the voltage, the current lags the voltage by 90 degrees, right? Because the inductor resists change in current. So the current lags the voltage. So if my voltage is given by plus 45, then I have to subtract 90 degrees and the answer is minus 45 degrees. So the phase difference makes sense and the magnitude is straightforward, subtraction, division of the voltage by the impedance. Now, how about this example? Now I have both an inductor and a resistor, and then I have some voltage, right? So what is going to be the current in this case? How can you solve this? So can you like quickly do it? Like you can pause the video and solve it. Very straightforward question. So the answer is going to be the transform voltage is given by 10 angle 0, right? Because it's just cos omega t. What is the frequency? Omega is given by 10 to the power 3, okay? Radians per second. Remember that omega is equal to 2 pi f. F is the frequency in hertz. Omega is in the radians per second because it's 2 pi radians into the frequency. Just note. So I said this, and then what is the impedance of the circuit? It is Z is equal to 25 plus j omega L, right? 25 for the resistor. So let me write it as R plus j omega L, just to be consistent. So Z is equal to 25 plus omega is 1000 and L is 30 millihenries. So milli and 1000 will cancel out. So you're left with 30 J. Okay, this is the impedance. What is the current? The transform current in the frequency domain is voltage divided by Z, V over Z, that is 10 angle 0 divided by 25 plus 30J. Okay, and that's 10 angle 0 divided by whatever this is, square root of 25 square is 625 plus 900 is the magnitude. And what is the phase? Tan inverse. Angle is tan inverse 30 by 25. Okay, so 30 by 25 is 6 by 5. That's 1.2. So let me just write it directly. So that's equal. So what is the current? So this is what? Root of 9 plus 6 is 1525. I don't know what that is. So 10 by root 1525 and angle 0 minus tan inverse 1.2. Okay, so that's the answer. This is the current. If I want the current in the time domain, then what would I say? So let me say this is equal to some magnitude Im and angle phi. That means the current I of t is equal to what? Im is the magnitude into cosine 10 cube t plus phi. Okay, and what is phi? Where phi is minus tan inverse. So this is like a lagging thing, right? Because this is a series RL circuit, makes sense. I had a purely inductor earlier. Now I've added a resistor in series. But overall, this has some combination of resistance and inductance. So the current still lags behind the voltage. What if I were to say make this circuit? So I add this and then I have some 30 ohms. How would I calculate this? Well, one of the things you can do is if I want to find what is the current, total current, I could always still use Thevenin's equivalent. So let's say I want to find the current through the inductor. Then I can put the, some terminals over here and find the Thevenin equivalent, so that the Thevenin equivalent is you short the voltage source and find out what is the resistance looking back from this terminal. So that's like 25 and 30 in parallel, right? So this is, let me put this in a different color. Let's see if this works. Okay. So that when you're later looking at the slides, you don't get confused. So this is a different question. And what happens in this case? So now what we are saying is I can find a Thevenin equivalent, which is if I keep the 30 millihenry section open, then looking back, I have 25 ohms and 30 ohms in parallel if I short the voltage source. Okay. So what is 25 in parallel with 30? 25 into 30 by 25 plus 30, which is 55. Okay. And that's 5, 11, 150 over 11. So let's say about 14 ohms is there. So then I would say that there is a 14 ohm resistor and that is in series with the voltage source. What is the value of the voltage? The voltage is the drop across the terminals, and that is like that will be 30 divided by 55. So 30 by 30 plus 25 into V of t. Okay, that's 30 over 55. And maybe instead of 30, I should have chosen 25 to make life easier. So I could have directly divided. But anyway, this is 30 by 55 into 10. So back to the same thing, 11 and 6. So 60 by 11 is say 5.56 or something like that. So this would become 5.56 into, now let me write it in the phasor notation, angle 0. So the voltage angle did not change, but the magnitude changed because I have the parallel resistor, and the resistance itself was how much? About 14 ohms or something like that. So do check the math. I may have got it wrong, but now you can so the point is that you can apply all these various network theorems as before, because that's what we did with the Laplace transform also, right? Once you had transformed the impedances, you could apply the various network theorems. Here too, you can do the similar things. So this is Thevenin equivalent. Now, main thing is that if you want to solve these circuits, then basically you have to remember that the frequency remains the same throughout the circuit. There is only a phase difference. See, if I wanted to calculate what is the current flowing through this branch or this branch or this branch, the frequency will always remain the same, which is omega is equal to 10 to the 3 radians per second. Okay, that will never change. On the other hand, you will see different amounts of phase shift. For example, the resistor branch will not show any phase shift, right? Because resistance is independent of frequency. But the inductor branch may show some phase shift. And therefore, the sum of these two currents will show some other phase shift, average phase shift. So you'll see different amounts of phase shifts if you're computing the current through different branches. So this current will have a different phase than this current, than this current. All of them may be different. But overall, the frequency will remain the same and magnitudes will change according to whatever the individual components are. So just one last point quickly, that is, if you want to, whatever we discussed earlier as the phasor, if you want to visualize it, then we said that here is the real axis and here is the imaginary axis. So if this is the component of x plus jy or something like that, then this would be the x-axis and this is the y-axis, which is the imaginary. Then if I were to plot the value of this Vm angle phi at any point, then Vm is root of, this is what? This is root of some x square plus y square, right? And therefore, when I write this phasor, this point over here corresponds to some value of x and some value of y. Okay, in the Cartesian coordinates, in the rectangular coordinates. Now, if you want to do it in the phasor or in the polar form, then Vm will be root of x square plus y square. The angle will be phi, where phi is tan inverse y by x. And now supposing I want to say that this is a cosine function, then what will happen is, if I want to draw the function as a function of frequency, that means what is happening, or here is a function of time. So the x-axis is time. Then what you can notice here is that as time increases for this phasor, this is some voltage. The V is what? Vm angle phi. What is the dependence on time over here? Nothing. Because this is a constant, this is a constant. This is just a constant. The only time dependence is coming from the j omega t term. So what we are saying is that if I have some function, e power j omega t, then if I want to plot it out, the way I would do it is, I can imagine that this phasor is rotating in a anti-clockwise direction. Because what you're noticing is, as time increases, e power j omega t increases, right? And therefore, this phasor will keep going in a circular motion. And if I take the projection of that across the imaginary axis, then you can actually see that the phasor is generating a cosine waveform. That's what you notice here. So this is just a simple graphical picture to understand how this complex exponential actually leads to a cosine or a sine waveform. Okay. So in this case, we say that if the phasor is cosine omega t plus phi, right? That means this will reach its zero value. So initially it is cosine omega t plus phi. If t is equal to 0, then it is just Vm cos phi, right? That's the original point. And then as time progresses, the phasor location will keep changing and the projection of that will also keep changing. So this is something you can just look at carefully. It may be useful or may not be useful at this time, but it's just to give you a visual idea of how the phasor corresponds to a real sinusoidal or a cosine, a real sine or a cosine function. So that's all, just a short class to get you, familiar with phasors. Because after this, what we will do is we'll go back to network functions and we will also look at some phase diagrams. We will look at the effect of magnitude and phase of the network transfer functions. So this concept of phasors, which you've already learned in the past, will help you connect to this phase diagram formalism. Okay. So let's stop for here. I think there is one homework question that you have which uses phasor. So this basic examples, couple of examples we did, should be sufficient to help you solve those questions. Okay then, thank you.